I don't know if we're going to get in or not. See what it says here. Use parents' door. Where's the parents' door? There's absolutely nothing happening here. Where's the parents' door? Where's the parents' door? Where's the parents' door? Jermain Defoe in the back. Jermain Defoe is in the back. Here he is. All right. We have a comment. Can we just... Jermain, you glad to be coming?
What do you think? Defoe!
Hello and welcome back to what should have been the What the Falk Sunderland review show, but is now quickly turned into what the hell happened in the last 24 to 48 hours. I'm sure, as you all know, we normally discuss and convene to discuss the weekend game, but since we got well up 6-0, I got a little bit angry. I think we all did. And I left it today. That was my mistake. Cue the return of Jermain Defoe. Well, so it seems. A manager being sacked. More players leaving that we didn't expect to leave, and hopefully more players coming through the door by the time you're listening to this. We'll be digging through what's been a real big 24 to 48 hours for Sunderland Association Football Club. And to dig through it, I've got 3 returning guests, 2 of them regulars. First and foremost, Dave Lawrence. Dave, how are you feeling after the last 48 hours?
Whirlwind, I guess. But all good. Just trying to make sense of it as much as everyone else, I think.
That's the problem when you try to make sense of Sunderland Association Football Club. You should never try because you can't. Brad, same question to you. It's been a mad few days. How are you feeling? All right?
I think the review would have been a lot different if it had been 24 hours later. I was still seething. But like you say, a lot's happened. Hopefully a lot will still happen in the next few hours.
Yeah, hopefully. And hopefully by the time this goes out, we've signed loads of great players and sold loads of ones that we don't really need anymore. But last and certainly not least, it's male model, face of Sky Sports News, and soon to be the only man with a deadline date tattoo. Tom White, how are you doing, mate? You all right?
Very well, thank you. I wasn't very good on Saturday. In fact, I was very, very bad on Saturday, but I'm great today, thank you.
I mean, we'll start on with yourself, Tom, on Saturday. I don't really want to go into it too much because it kind of feels like almost irrelevant now in some sense. But I was just saying before I came on there, I haven't really spoken to Ashley since we came back because we've both been quite busy. And I said, I think domestically, if you're taking away big, important games like Newcastle away when you've lost and games like that, I think for playing a team in a domestic game, that's probably the lowest I've ever felt was Saturday, if I'm completely honest. And older listeners might think that sounds quite funny because I'm sure there's been slightly worse moments. But how did you feel on the back of Saturday?
I think it probably was, arguably the worst result in our history. But actually, at 6-0, you kind of start to feel a bit. The kind of anger went out of me a bit. I felt a lot more angry against Accrington, with the late equaliser when they had 10 men. Same when we drew with Shrewsbury with 10 men. As well, the 2 late goals to make it 2-2 that Fleetwood scored against us as well. They were the ones where I was really angry. And imagine if we'd held on and won those games. Imagine if we'd held on against Wickham as well. You're talking an extra 8 points. They're the ones that really annoyed me. Saturday was just such a shock. It kind of just knocked me for 6. With no pun intended.
No, let's keep it in. Let's keep the pun in. That was a good pun. I'll be honest and say that I've never left a game early. I think I left one in Boxing Day when people will remember Ronaldo absolutely tortured us on Boxing Day and we were, I think, 4-0 down with 10 minutes to go and I had to get a train on Boxing Day to what was my girlfriend's house and I thought, I can skip 10 minutes, this will be all right, we're being beat. I've never left in disgust. And I remember saying at half time to Ashley and Hannah, who I went to the game with, I said, there's part of me that hopes that they bang in a third early doors here because then it's kind of right, we're not going to have 45 minutes of hope. And if we just get one, you never know. But then the third one went in, and the fourth one went in, and I was like, I'm away here. And I think a lot of people were the same. And I don't like people leaving the game early, but you couldn't blame them, really, could you, Tom?
No, I remember that Manchester United game we talked about. That was when Waghorn he started, didn't he? Made his debut at the Stadium of Light. No, I wouldn't have blamed people for leaving early. I don't like doing it either. I think a lot of people might have have stayed actually just to show their disgust, to be honest. But no, I can't blame people. It was really bad. It was. I've never seen anything like it. It was depressing, and I didn't expect what happened the next day to happen.
I didn't, and I think anyone who listens to this, and look, hey, we all have a camp in what we think is right and wrong for the football club because we care, because we're fans. That's what happens. I think we sometimes lose touch of that. Sometimes those opinions can be polar opposite, and I have been quite vocally not a fan of Lee Johnson for quite a while. Turned me around a little bit, maybe in the Sheffield game, and I thought maybe I'm the idiot. And I've said this a few times, I love when I'm wrong, but I've got to be honest, I felt early doors for a multitude of reasons, which I won't go into. He wasn't the right man, but I didn't expect that to happen. And Brad, I'll come to you because you're kind of on a line with me on that, and then maybe we'll do a bit of a roundtable here. But I didn't expect Johnson to go. I'm like Tom. I kind of thought KLD will kind of dig his heels in and go with a long-term project that he had. He didn't. He kind of took us by surprise a bit. But I think me and you agreed off it. I thought it was deserved. Do you think it was coming?
Yeah, definitely, mate. Just have to look at some of the stats recently. I think it was 7 wins in 22. I've read somewhere. Doncaster are the only team to concede more goals away from home as well. So when you start putting things in perspective and knowing that it's imperative that we get out this league this season, I think KLD has probably looked at it without the long-term picture in mind of what they're building for, and thought maybe a change is needed if we are to get out this league. I didn't expect it the day before deadline day, if I'm honest. But with the structure that's in place, I think Speakman is in charge of a lot of the recruitment, so I don't think it's going to affect it that much. Yes, possibly because some players do look at it and think, what's the coach that I'm going to be playing for? That was the little bit that was going inside my head. Is going to put some players off from coming. But yeah, I mean, I'm the same as you. I've been very vocal about it, and we've both been on here when we sort of turned it around, said, hey, if he can keep proving us wrong, I'm more than happy to be proven wrong, because that means that the club are going somewhere. But it is what it is, and he's gone. It's just so important that we get the next manager is the right manager or coach.
I think I'll come to you, Dave, with more or less the same question with Lee Johnson. It's really hard to pick apart a managerial campaign. You need to have about 3 hours, and you probably even can't do it justice. So there will be things that people think, what about this, that, and the other. But I think for me, ultimately, with Johnson, I know a lot of people said we played really good football, and it's the best football we've played since we've been down here. And there's a lot of examples where I can agree with that. But on the flip side, it's also some of the worst football I've seen us play, the most open we've been. And I never in my life, and not that I'm putting League One down because we're here for a reason, we've been here for that long, but I never in my life thought I'd be picking apart 5-1 defeats, 6-0 defeats, and 4-0 defeats, and 3-0 defeats. Ultimately, we conceded too many away from home. And for me, didn't know, like, knew how to fix it. I think I spoke about Jack Ross years ago, and I was another. I just don't like any manager, do I? Jeez. I think towards the end, I was thinking, well, Jack Ross, he's not learning from his mistakes, and that was a panic for me. And obviously, I live up here in Edinburgh, and Hibs fans loved him when he first went in. And the same sort of thing kind of happened for me, and I kind of said, well, it looks like he doesn't learn from his mistakes. And for me, Johnson just kept making them. But Dave, not every fan's right. Fans are never 100% right. I could be completely wrong, and people might 100% agree or 100% disagree. But where do you feel about Johnson ultimately in his 14 month that he had?
I think if there's one thing that you can't be as a modern day football manager, for me personally, it's stubborn. It's all very well having your game plan, your philosophy, and I agree that you should have it. And it was nice to see what he was trying to do. But at the level that we're at, unless you're like a Manchester City or something like that, who are, let's be quite honest, leagues above everyone else, you have to adapt your game plan to certain scenarios. And Johnson just didn't seem a fan of that. And then if you take on, there's been a couple of things mentioned in the last week. any manager who seems to have done well with us seems to be an extension of the fans. It's something that I've said for years. And, yeah, the Sharks bite on a Monday and stuff like that. It just doesn't wash, does it? It's, you don't need it. You just need to come out sometimes and say, listen, we weren't good enough tonight. And that's it. That's all you need to say to get the fans on your side. We weren't good enough tonight. We're going to go and do some extra work this week. We're going to graft as hard as we possibly can. You don't need all the patter that comes with it, I suppose. And I just think that was his thing. It's undoubted. To be honest, by the time this transfer window goes shut, if we get in the signings, the last few signings that they're mentioning, this squad for League One is pretty much a joke, if I'm honest. There's some serious potential in there, albeit they haven't done it for a while. They're all at the right age. They should all be hungry enough. So yeah, it'll be interesting. But yeah, there's good bits and there's bad bits, isn't there? There's when we were good, we were very good. When we were bad, my God, we were terrible. So it's nice that we've played some decent football because we have been watching some dross for a couple of seasons. But yeah, ultimately, you can't be getting beat 6-0 in the third division of football, can you?
No, not with the... And you can't be getting beat 5-1 off a promotion rival either. And I know some people think we're third and stuff like that. But you know what? I'm not going to go too in it. I think people are fully aware that I'm not a fan and I was relatively okay with the decision. But I think there's reason behind it. Tom, you said you were quite surprised by the decision. I think we all were, to be honest. I think mainly because we'd almost bought into that vision that Kieran Louis-Dreyfus had kind of said. I think he said he's going to be a long-term appointment. So he kind of went, well, it's going to take a lot for him to move. And I know 6-0 is a lot, but again, there's the caveat that we're third and still in contention and we've played good football. You were taken back by it, but did you ultimately think it was a fair decision, Tom?
I haven't really decided yet whether I think it was fair or not. I think it's understandable, but still surprising, which I think we've all kind of said. With where we are in the league, I can't see us getting into the top two now, just because I think Wigan are already up, and I think Rotherham have just been better than us. They've got the long-term manager. They know what they're doing. They can do it on autopilot because they're used to the way they play, etc. They're also used to getting promoted. So I think no matter who the manager is, I also don't think we'll drop out the playoffs, which I hope aren't famous last words. So I think if we're going to be in the playoffs, I thought maybe Johnson could have just had the season, had the playoffs. And if we don't go up, then it's like, right, you've had 2 chances now, or at least 1.5 chances, time to go. Now, this is where, see, that isn't very ambitious of me. What I do like about what the club are doing is they are ambitious. They're making this change because they want to be in the top 2 and they think that we can still do it. And they think with the right man or woman, we can actually get into that top 2. If we go on a run, an amazing run, and don't tail off like we did at the end of last season, and they're thinking that puts the pressure on Wigan and Rotherham, and as Wickham as well, of course, and maybe we'll do it. And that's their plan. And that is quite ambitious because I probably would have stuck with Johnson, given him the playoffs and hoped to have done it through there. This change means that for the first time in a long time, Sunderland actually are showing ambition.
I think a lot of Dave touching it before about the waffle is what he waffled a lot for me, and I wasn't a big fan of that. But I've never ever felt sorry for him, and I didn't feel sorry for him on Sunday. But the way he reacted in the post match, I don't mean to sound mean to him, but he did look like he was going to cry, and it looked like that was. And some of the things he said about an emotionless, numb dressing room and stuff like that. I suppose looking back at the interview, do you think he maybe knew then? Because it wasn't exactly a fighting interview, was it, Tom?
I actually think he was just devastated. I doubt he did know then. I think earlier on in the season, when we had that, it might be after the Sheffield Wednesday game. Was that at the end? Was that the end of the bad run when we got stuffed by Sheffield Wednesday? And then we came back and went on a decent run. Then I wondered if he was kind of on his last legs, but he went on this good run. I think then he knew he was under pressure. I think at this stage, I don't think he was expecting this personally. I'm just guessing there. I think he just was absolutely devastated like we were. And I think he thought, remember when we lost 6-2 against Everton under Sam Allardyce? And after the game, Sam Allardyce said, I actually don't know what's happened. Normally, when we lose a game or something goes wrong, I know what's gone wrong. I know how to fix it. But I cannot work out what went wrong in that game when we lost 6-2. And I think that's exactly what happened. I think that's what Lee Johnson was thinking at the time as well. And he was thinking, I'm absolutely stuffed by this result, and so are the players, and I don't really know what to do.
He just looked, I actually agree with that. Couldn't think of it. He looked snookered, and that is always a big worry. But there's been a lot of conversation about the players he's brought in, like Pritchard and bringing through Embo and Dan Neil. But the fact that we're really active in the transfer market, and by the time this goes out, people will probably know who we've brought in, and the fact that I brought in Patrick Roberts and whatnot, and then made a decision literally 2 or 3 days later. Do you think it indicates that the system that Kieran Louis-Dreyfus and Speakman want to put in place, Tom, that idea of a sporting director and signing players for a project which comes from him, and then the coach manages it, that when we bring a new manager in, it's going to be relatively seamless because they're not Johnson's men necessarily, if you know what I mean?
Well, that was the master plan when Ellis Short brought in Roberto De Fanti, and then when he changed Roberto De Fanti for Lee Congerton, that was the master plan. De Fanti didn't get very much time, of course, and when we brought in Allardyce didn't really want to work with the director of football, so that idea went out the window. Speakman seems to have a lot more power at the club than Congerton and De Fanti had, in just looking at it from the outside. And he's got an owner who is clearly more patient about it as well. And the fact that we're not worried about losing the Premier League money because we're not in the Premier League anymore, that certainly helps as well. So I think I think that's right. I think the whole point is that the managers it can be a seamless transition from one manager to the other, because actually the manager isn't in full control of transfers anyway. And I do think, by the way, whoever comes in is going to look at the squad and be pretty happy with it. I think they're inheriting a very good squad, regardless of what happens in these final few hours, because we're recording this in the final few hours of transfer deadline day. I also think that any manager worth his salt is going to look at the league table, see that we're third, look at our squad and say, I can get us into that top 2, right? I think there's going to be a lot of managers out there who will have the confidence in themselves and the confidence in the players that they are going to be able to do that. And obviously, I hope that is the case. But definitely, if we had a manager and not a director of football or sporting director, we wouldn't have sacked someone the day before deadline day. No chance. The fact that we haven't got a manager, but we're still pressing ahead with deals, which we're going to go through anyway, you would imagine, proves that actually this can work, hopefully.
Stick with you, Tom. I'll come back to Brad and Dave when we want to see who's next. I just wanted to kind of see if this was something. I've been quite reluctant to say it because, well, you never know how much is whispers and how much isn't. I'm pretty certain on good authority that, when we touch on the system that they're putting in place, that before Lee Johnson was offered the job, Gus Poyet was pretty much the nailed-on man for it. And I think there's a lot of people that got that vibe as well. And then all of a sudden, Gus wasn't the man. Do you think that situation could have arose because of the fact that we have a head coach and we have a sporting director? It maybe rules out, I don't want to use the word Sam Allardyce because it's a total pipe dream, but there's certain managers that come in that don't want to work with sporting directors. And Gus Poyet was very much, he said on this particular podcast, how can I be a manager when other people are signing the players that I don't want? Which made sense. But does that rule out a lot of people such as Gus Poyet, such as the likes of Sam Allardyce, such as people who are managers, not coaches, or managers and coaches? Does that rule out a lot of people having that system, do you think?
if we're wanting to appoint a long-term head coach, like the plan was with Lee Johnson, then it might rule out people that don't want to work with a sporting director. However, if we are saying, right, we need someone to the end of the season to get us up, it won't matter, because they'll only be working on the training pitch and during the games, because the transfer window will have closed, and the next transfer window, this manager isn't expecting to be there. So Christian Speakman and the rest of the recruitment team can get on with transfers for the summer, and they'll have already done the January transfers. That shouldn't scare anybody off if we're going to go down that short-term route of like somebody like Warnock or McCarthy or Allardyce, who I don't think it's any secret how much I love him. He'd be my first choice, even if I was a Man U fan, he'd be my first choice. So, but if we were going to get a short-term manager, then that shouldn't make a difference at all. Long-term, I don't think it would be. It might put a few managers off, but managers in this day and age understand the way it works. So I'm not worried about that, to be honest with you, and I'm not sure if that's why Poyet didn't take the job either.
Because I mean, I don't know if you can spill on this, but I was told he was pretty much offered it before Johnson was. As far as you were aware, did you think Johnson was maybe the second choice or not the first choice?
But I don't know where he was on the list, but Poyet. The thing is, when Poyet was at Sunderland before he was in the Premier League, big money, because every manager in the Premier. I'm not saying that he was overpaid or anything like that. He was just on a Premier League manager's wage.
Bigger wedge, isn't it? Yeah.
In League One, he will have been, and I'm not exaggerating here, he will have been offered something like a tenth of what he was on last time. Now, you'll absolutely understand that we're in League One, but you can't have the same job on a tenth of the money, really. I mean, who's going to do that? So I don't think, that was completely understandable that he didn't fancy it for that reason. So I don't think it will be. I'd be very surprised if it is Poyet, by the way, who does take charge. But I haven't heard any whispers. Not whispers. Sorry, I've heard loads of whispers. I haven't heard from any source that I trust about who the next manager will be.
Same, absolutely. Trust me, I've been asking people. But if Gus, if you are listening, I would not mind you. We can all chip in together and maybe boost your wage a little bit. I'm sure Dave's got a nice pub he can sell. Brad, I don't know what me and you've got, but we'll put it together. And Tom works for Sky Sports, so we'll be fine. Dave, I'll come on to you. You'd love to run over this. What happened with Lee Johnson, the 14-month? I'd love to do it, but so much has happened. We simply don't have the time, or we'll be on here for 3 hours, and I don't think anyone's going to listen to us for 3 hours. If you do, thank you very much, but I'm sure you don't. Ultimately, Dave, it's really early doors. I get that, but we always have a man or a manager or a head coach in our head, and also one in our heart. They don't always align. But if you were to choose one, in where we're speaking at the moment, who are you wanting in your head? Who's your heart saying?
They're two very different things, the old head and heart in situations like this.
Like your head saying Grant McCann and your heart's going, Jose Mourinho maybe might fancy it.
Yeah. For the world of Twitter that's been going off all day, there isn't really anyone who has excited me. Let's put it that way. None of the names. If there was, in terms of the betting, gamble responsible, everyone. If we're looking at the betting, the one that stuck out for me, just simply because I saw an interview after he left Villa and Dean Smith, and it kind of rankled with me a little bit and made me think a little bit differently about him, would be John Terry. And I've had a couple of conversations today, and people have said, John Terry, really? I mean, he's so southern, it's unbelievable. And I understand that. But the chance to start your career at a club like Sunderland must be, for someone who wants to, for someone who has been such a winner throughout his career, and the fact that he will want to become a winner as a manager, I think it must be too big of an appeal, I think. So if it was a long-term appointment, he'd be my choice out of what I've seen in the betting. If it was a purely heart moment and the fact that I think Jermain Defoe is currently in a taxi to get his scarf picture took, I could be wrong. But if it was that, I'd just love to throw all our eggs in like the tiniest basket ever and bring Allardyce home. But I mean, that is pure fantasy. It can't be that good of a day, can it? It can't be.
I just don't think Carlsberg make days that good. They don't even make that good beer. No offense, Carlsberg. Do you want to sponsor us? I'll change my mind on that. I got a bit of grief today on Twitter about it. So I'll keep it short and sweet. I wouldn't want John Terry for the simple reason that I've got a lot of respect for Anton Ferdinand. Every other reason from a footballing perspective, I understand. I think my respect for Anton Ferdinand and not wanting people like that to be at the football club, I don't think he would be my choice, but I understand why people feel that as a winner and a Roy Keane-esque, he was on the pitch very much like that. Brad, I haven't listened to you. I haven't spoke to you for a while. I'll come to you with the same sort of question. We've discussed a couple of people like you fancy today. I think it's pretty obvious who I would quite like. My heart is totally ruling my head. I'm going to just say Gus Poyet or Sam Allardyce if he really fancies it. I'm a romantic. What can I say? Steve Bold also interests me, if I'm honest with you, which is a bit left field. But Brad, where are you thinking is not the smart money in terms of betting, gamble responsibly, but the smart money in terms of what would be the right appointment for Sunderland, either short term or long term?
I'm like you. If you go with your heart, you're obviously going to use the Sam Allardyce one or Gus Poyet. For me, I think a sensible choice would be maybe Grant McCann. And there's one that I'm not sure if he would come down to this level. Jokanovic,
who was at Sheffield United up until recently. Yeah. Now,
it might not sound like a glamour appointment, but he works, as far as I'm aware, as a head coach and not a manager. Now, he's worked with a lot better players than we have got. He's worked in the Premier League. He's got Fulham to the Premier League. And he's currently out of work. So it's not one that has been thrown about there, but it's just came to me over the last hour or so, just looking at potential ones out of work. And I wouldn't be opposed to him coming in, to be honest with you. I know you've seen the likes of Mick Max put his name back in the hat. For me, no. It's just one of them. Like we just go on like through previous managers just for the what's the word I'm looking for, Graham?
Romance.
The romance, yeah. But they're not. Apart from Allardyce or Poyet, for me, no one that we've had before. I know we've seen Roy Keane's mentioned, but he hasn't really done it for a long time now, has he? Number two at Ireland, but
I can't imagine Roy Keane taking a League One defeat very well. I feel like Roy Keane would torch the dressing room at this point. Like, imagine getting me 6-0 at Bolton. You would think it was Newcastle would all be decapitated afterwards. Do you know what I mean? But I don't know if I have to edit that or not. Tom, I'm looking at the betting market here. It's more interest when it goes down, Tom, to be honest. You've got Neil Lennon and John Terry more or less splitting hairs. Grant McCann, Mick McCarthy, Duncan Ferguson, Big Sam. Then you've got Liam Manning, Neil Warnock, Alex Neil, Gus Poyet, Mark Bonner, Gareth Ainsworth, Paul Cook, Jody Morris. I have a feeling, because you like a left field appointment, Tom, that you might give me something different here. But who are you fancying? Gut feeling?
Yeah, well, only because I'd be very surprised if Allardyce is interested. I mean, he said to me just before Christmas that he'd never say never to coming back to Sunderland, but not in League One. Right, and it's Sam Allardyce, fair enough. So my other than that, my second choice is Emma Hayes from Chelsea Women.
It's a great show. Yeah, and I
don't think she would take it either. I don't think she would. I think she, she's got it good at Chelsea. I think that she will eventually get the Chelsea men's job if she wants it. Eventually, and I think she'll end up being the first English person to win the Premier League. So I don't think that she will come to us. But they were the two that came to our mind straight away.
You meant English woman, by the way, there, didn't you? Sorry, you said English person, just to react. English woman. I knew what you meant, just for the listeners.
Well, no, but an English man has never won the Premier League.
Oh, really?
That's why. So she would be the first English person. Yeah.
That is insane. Education here, Tom. You see, you come on and give education.
Who was the last English person who was a man to win the top flight before it was the Premier League?
It was Sergeant Wilco, Howard Wilkinson.
It was with Leeds. So Allardyce first choice, Emma Hayes second choice. Other than that, I think it's quite difficult. Straight away into my mind last night, I went to bed early because I had to be in work. Alarm was set for 2:20 this morning to be in work for deadline day. And then I was awake all night because this news happened. And I kept thinking that with just between now and the end of the season, Warnock and McCarthy would not be bad options at all. And I know that you're saying that no one on that list excites you. You know what you're getting with them. They know how to do this. Warnock has always said his biggest regret in football was not taking the Sunderland job when he had the chance to at Roker Park. Mick McCarthy always talks very highly of Sunderland. He could get a championship job for a club who are trying to stay up, or he could go to League One of a club trying to go up. So they're kind of on my mind. They're not ones that really. There's no. When O'Neill got the job, it was like perfect person for the job.
Yeah, no one else did there at the time.
And it was. I mean, when Roy Keane got the job, it was wow. I mean, that was like mind blowing when he got the job. When Allardyce got the job, I said at the time he's the only person that can keep us up, and he did keep us up. See, Poyet wasn't even that exciting. It was like, well, we know what he can do. Should we give him a chance in the Premier League? Yes, and he did well for us. But on that list there, the safest bet would be Grant McCann. But again, like you say, no one on that list is particularly exciting. And I understand. I mean, last time, I'm quite lucky. I don't tend to get that much abuse on Twitter, right? I think it's because I'm quite safe and I don't really have that many followers. That helps. But the only time I get mega abuse is when I actually say who I think should be the Sunderland manager. And last time I put up a short list of 6. I must admit, John Terry was on that list.
Yeah, I remember because you were on the show 14 months ago discussing that with me, I think with Danny Collins, weren't we? And we had a full chat about that. I remember that.
Yeah. But someone else on that list, and I still would be keen on this guy, would be Ashley Cole. Just he's got all of his coaching badges. When I hear him talk, I think it's quite mesmerising the way he talks about football and the way he talks about tactics. And also, he's young enough and relevant enough to go into that dressing room and everybody go, wow, it's Ashley Cole. So so left field, Ashley Cole. Emma Hayes, I suppose, is left field. And I think I actually even had Defoe on that list 14 months ago. And he's 14 months older now, so it's more of a chance of it happening there.
Yeah, I was talking to my granddad and I said, would Defoe be the worst option? He's worked as a coach, but has he actually got the right coaching badges to do it yet? But
yeah, that's something I don't know. But he has already been a player coach at Rangers, so he must have some coaching badges. He must do. It's quite interesting because I've said to a few people today, I could see him being the interim manager until we appoint someone. So maybe for a few weeks, if he comes straight in, because we haven't got a caretaker manager at the moment. So I said, I can imagine him being interim manager for a couple of weeks. And not one person I've said that to has had a problem with it. Not one person, which is quite interesting. Because
when I was talking about Defoe, I said, if he comes in and we do get one of these short-term managers just to get us up this year, hopefully, is there something in that Defoe deal where they'll take us to the end of the season, you'll be the coach under them, then you are our long-term plan going forward? That's been on my mind.
Yes.
Still on.
Yeah, I don't think that's a ridiculous thing to think at all. I mean, I don't know if that is what's planned, of course, but I don't think it's a ridiculous thing to think that. But last time we did that with Steve Cottrell and Howard Wilkinson, and they both ended up going a few months later. But I do like your notice. I nipped off there because my son was crying upstairs. But
because you remember in Saturday,
I think you were talking about. I think you were talking about Slavica Jokanovic, weren't you? And I'd be delighted with him. I'd be delighted with him. But again, he's used to getting paid big money. You don't get big money in League One, despite how big a club we are. Before we move on to nice things, because we rarely get nice things. And Jermain Defoe's just posted something on Instagram with a emoji of the eyes, and he's looking at the trainers. I think by the time this comes out, you'll obviously understand. I think it's probably happened. I think I'm safe in saying that. If not, it's just a good edit job, isn't it? But I've been thinking about it a bit today. I mentioned Steve Bolton things before, and the more the Defoe thought process is coming up, it might be left field, but Michael Beale, obviously, who was at Rangers and has gone to Villa with Steven Gerrard. Leicester he was at as well, wasn't he? Was he at Leicester?
I believe so, yeah. And he's building up a real reputation as a really good coach. Obviously, he did a really, really, really good job with Gerrard at Rangers. I would like to think I've got a little bit of know-how about what obviously goes on with clubs like that because I watch them regularly. And the way he turned that ship around and turned it from being, if I'm quite honest with you, like a shadow of what Rangers were in the past to like one of the better Rangers sides in the past couple of years. And obviously he believed in Jermain Defoe with Gerrard to give him a coaching job. And I think potentially if we could tempt them, which I don't know if we could, if I'm honest, I think that's sometimes the worry is, could we tempt them? Because in the past, you think, well, in the Premier League, you can pretty much tempt anyone if the money's right. That's not the case now. But I also think Michael Beale might not be a bad shout. And I mean, it'll be surprising no one for someone who obviously watches a lot of women's football, but Emma Hayes would be, if she would lower herself to League One, no-brainer for me. Absolute no-brainer.
I understand the Michael Beale one because it worked with Blackpool with Critchley. They got a very good coach and said, right, be a head coach, and it worked. There's a lot of times where it doesn't work. It didn't work with Graham Jones, did it? So there's examples where it's worked, examples when it hasn't worked, and of course we don't know if he wants to be a head coach in the first place. But I understand your way of thinking. Yeah.
Saying it was Leicester, by the way, it wasn't. It was Chelsea originally when he was young. And I think he went to.
Oh, was
Liverpool.
it? Okay, right.
I think he met Gerrard at Liverpool under 23s, but he's built himself up as a coach and so on and so forth. But like I said, on to good news. Look, I'm going to be safe in saying, hopefully, if this goes tits up, then it's my fault. I think it's safe to say Jermain Defoe is coming back to Sunderland. If he doesn't, I'm going to be incredibly shocked.
I can't wait just to recommend some tattoos, tattooists around the area for Tom.
The thing is, around the
guys, done as well.
It's sorted. I'll let you into an exclusive.
Yes.
If once Defoe is announced, and our sources are saying that it is, pretty much done. I am booked in for 1:30 tomorrow at a tattoo artist near Edinburgh Airport because my fiance is taking me to Edinburgh for 2 nights as a thank you for proposing to her, and rightly so.
Yep.
So I'm booked into one, but it will be a henna tattoo and not a permanent one.
What a job.
I actually didn't bottle it. I said I'm up for it, but I'm going on holiday for a couple of nights. They were like, right, well, we're gonna have to do it while it's fresh in the memory because work will be sending a camera and stuff, obviously. And I was like, I'm happy to do it, but I mean, if I go to Edinburgh and get a proper tattoo, I mean, how long does a proper tattoo take?
I couldn't tell you.
That's transfer talk. Not long.
Half an hour.
And what, a real one?
3 minutes.
Yeah.
I've been told the henna takes 40.
Nah, you could get a tattoo quicker.
I got my son.
Okay.
That only took about 45 minutes.
Oh, fair enough. Because
Jeez.
I said I'm up for it, and everyone and my bosses were like, "Really? You actually going to go through that?" Yeah, I'll do it. And they were like, "All right, just make it a non-permanent one." So fair enough.
If at the time when that came along, it's funny, it co-aligned with, I think a few people got that message this morning. And when you said it, I kind of, like, because obviously I'm working from home at the moment. My head lifted up when the word Defoe said, and I was like, oh God, hang on a minute. At the same time as I got the text, did you know how close that was at the time? Because I think obviously it's going to go out tomorrow. I think by this point he'll have signed. People will know that.
We got an update this morning. I personally got an update from a source just to say that Sunderland were still working on it, and then a colleague of mine got another source a little bit stronger to say, like properly in talks, as opposed to, because I know Lee Johnson said that there was an offer on the table, right? Well, today, my colleague got the line that we're back in talks, but I still didn't think it was. I just thought, no, this doesn't happen to Sunderland fans. So I was still quite pessimistic. But I didn't plan to say that, by the way. We were just talking about Defoe. Me and the panel were talking about Defoe. And I was just like, it's kind of thing where you kind of say like, oh, yeah, I'd eat my hat, or I'd present naked or something like that. And I get it, because I've got no tattoos. I'll just get a tattoo. But my fiance has said that if I got a real one, she would, what did she say? She would leave me. And my mum said she'd kill me. So it probably is good that it's a temporary one.
Disappointed, Natasha. You shouldn't have said that.
I'll get
it.
I was waiting for a new one. I'll get it on your behalf.
All right, we're fine. Yeah, okay, fine. Yeah,
recorded now. It's funny. I said I want to move away from Johnson, Brad, but I don't know whether we've done a podcast since. I think we did a podcast when it was linked with Defoe. There was a lot of stuff that came up about Scott Wilson, and I know this is going to make me unpopular because I think people thought Scott Wilson was talking shite, but I thought that he wouldn't post that unless he had a few people telling him Johnson is not 100% sure on Defoe. I don't think as a local journalist you'd put your reputation on the line that much, and obviously he's been made to look like a bit of a dick at first, no offence, Scott, because obviously it's came up where Lee Johnson's kind of spun it back and said, oh, we are interested and stuff like that. But I think it speaks volumes, Brad, that Lee Johnson has gone in 24 hours later. Jermain Defoe is posting photos of him, what looks like in a taxi. And I'm sure, like I say, by the time this goes out, he's got the scarf above his head. Do you think Johnson was the one blocking it?
Well, it was funny you mentioned that, because after that report came out from Wilson, I texted in Total Sport saying, bit tongue-in-cheek, saying if it's a choice between Defoe and Johnson, there's the door, Lee. And Marco Gabbiadini gave me a load of shite for it. And I mean, he tore into me. It was only a text. And I usually get along with Marco. So I was like, I've left it for a week to get back in touch. But it actually seems like Kill might have been listening to what I've said. I do still think that Lee Johnson didn't want him because he's a bigger character and a bigger name in football. And I don't think he wanted any sort of risk that the power could shift from him. If things started going wrong, as it has, but say if it was a month down the line, I believe that he thinks if he gets sacked, well, Defoe will just take straight over. And he was maybe putting a few barriers up. That's just my opinion. Obviously, ultimately, it would have been Speakman and KLD that made the final choice on that. But I do think there was a little bit of truth in it. How much truth it was, I'm not sure. Lee Johnson was asked many a time in press conferences, and we've touched on it, that he likes to go around the houses before getting the answer. He doesn't like to tell you that the sky's blue and the grass is green, water's wet. He'll explain why them things.
P45,
so
P45.
Answer in the pre-match press conferences. So it's hard to gauge, but I think in one sense, Scott Wilson was maybe a little bit right, but he's sort of taken things that Johnson said and put his own twist on it, really. Just because obviously it sells papers, doesn't it, for him?
No, he will have had a good source, 100%. I mean, I've had a contact of mine said that Johnson was the one with reservations about it, but another contact of mine had said that Johnson wanted him. So, there's no way that he would have gone with that story if he hadn't got that from a good source. And we'll probably never know now whether it was true or not. But either way, Johnson's gone and looks like Defoe's in.
I felt like that. I mean, I felt like, and not that I've ever met Scott to my memory anyway, but I just felt like you wouldn't post that story without more than at least 3 sources, Tom, for me. 2 or 3 at least.
Yeah, well, it depends. What I would do is if it was a really, really good source that I trusted, I would listen to that source, then definitely phone the club and say, I'm going with this story, all right, because I believe the source. If Sunderland said that is absolutely not true, no way, that is not true, I'd probably go, okay, I'm not going to run it. If they said no comment, I'd run it because I trusted my source. And if they said, well, yeah, that is true, then obviously you'd run that as well. You don't necessarily need, more than one source. It depends how trustworthy that source is. I mean, if it comes from, quite often on Sky Sports News, quite often the stories that you see in the breaking news has come from like the chief executive or director of football or even the manager. I mean, you don't need to do much checking for that. I mean, you phone the clubs out of courtesy, but that source is so good that you go with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I just felt like you'd have more than just took a few quotes and put it together. And I'm sure people disagree with me on that. And I know I went with the unpopular opinion when that bit came out with Scott Wilson. However, nonetheless, it doesn't really matter, I suppose, because it looks like ultimately JD's coming and Lee Johnson hasn't got to say in it because he hasn't got the job here anymore. I think
sorry again, just while we're on, you can edit this out. I'm hearing here that the Congolo deal is off.
Interesting.
It was really exciting, wasn't it?
I mean, we will touch on it, absolutely, and hopefully that changes by the end of this coming out. But just whilst we're with Defoe, I think we all collectively said we felt like it was a good signing, and I think a lot of people, not a lot, some people from the outside and some people even on the inside of Sunderland have questioned it because of A, age, B, he hasn't been playing for Rangers. Is he still going to be the same player? Can you pin all your hopes on a 39-year-old? I think it's pretty clear what I think. I think it's pretty clear what Brad thinks. And Dave, you pretty much felt the same as I'm guessing you, Tom, as well. But Dave, do you understand just for balance the reservations, or do you think it's just overly cautious?
I'll sit on the fence.
The reservations that he hasn't played recently and that he got bombed out of Rangers, I think a few people have said to me, which I don't think was the case, if I'm honest. I don't think he got bombed out of Rangers. I think he still thinks he can play football. But do you think there's a chance? Because I just don't feel it. Is there a chance Defoe could come and it might not work? Are we just kidding ourselves here, Dave? Or?
No, because I don't. It's not as if it is low risk, really, isn't it? I mean,
yeah,
the club want him. He wants to be here. We know he keeps himself right. We know he looks after himself. We know he's the consummate professional. Sorry. And we're not going to expect him to play 90 minutes week in, week out, are we? So I think in that respect, yeah, I think it's... No, I don't think it will go wrong. Whether it's a case of, like Tom said earlier, we have to have the playoffs. And that's one thing I wanted to mention about earlier as well. I tell you what, if there was an option to get, obviously Allardyce would certainly be my number one, but a McCarthy or a Warnock, I tell you what, going into the playoff final where we know we are notoriously, historically terrible, who would you rather have on the sideline? A Johnson or an Allardyce, a Warnock or a McCarthy? I know what my answer is, no disrespect to Lee Johnson. He has had us playing some decent football. But yeah, the same for having a Jermain Defoe in and amongst that, if we do get to that position where we need, there you go, set the scene. If Tom's right earlier on and we are going to finish in the playoffs and there's 20 minutes left in the playoff against Charlton, please be against Charlton. Jermain Defoe comes on and scores the winner. I'm just putting it out there.
couldn't take the playoffs anymore, me. I'm not having it. Do you know, we were talking before, Dave, I agree 100% what you said about the Sunderland needs a manager that's an extension of the fans. I thought that was fucking bang on. Don't like to use sweary words, but I thought it was. Because I agree. I think Mick Mack, who actually got relegated with like the lowest points ever and yada yada, and I know he made a lot of mistakes then, but he got a pretty poor side up. No offense to the lads that were in that squad that I might know. Sorry, Danny Collins. And the likes of Roy Keane galvanised amazingly well. Allardyce, broader shoulders than the River Wear, loved him. Peter Reid, another iconic Sunderland manager. Bob Stoker, going back before my lifetime, galvanised the club as well. Sunderland do need a manager that is an extension of that. But is there a possibility, Dave, that we could bring in a manager that maybe isn't like super duper exciting? You know, like Warnock would be fun. I love Neil Warnock. You got to fucking die for 3 points. Love that. But is there a possibility that the Jermain Defoe signing could be that lift that we need anyway, Dave?
Yeah. I mean, who could disagree? Listen, I tell you what, I wish we had the analytics for Twitter today, because it must be phenomenal. And that's just off me. That is just off me, let alone God knows how many tens of thousands of fans. So, hey, it's absolutely madness. I'm not sure I agree with the fact that if we sign them tonight, there'll be an extra 5,000 to 8,000 fans at the game on Saturday. I'm not 100% sure of that. I will put my neck on the line and say, if it's Allardyce and Defoe tonight, there will be an extra 5,000 to 8,000 fans.
We'd finally fill that extension, wouldn't we? Like the Premier Concourse will be back open if we did that, I think. But we can dream, babe. We can dream.
Definitely. So, yeah, it might be big. You know, it's got to... Let's be honest. Okay, we haven't been on the greatest run in January as a club, but we're still in touch. We've still got a chance of automatic promotion. There's no doubt about that. So yes, the Defoe signing, I think, would give us momentum, especially alongside just freshening things up a little bit, getting rid of the likes of O'Brien. Again, consummate professional. No bad words to say against him.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, you know, he just wasn't my type of footballer. I still maintain that when we signed him, he was a defensive winger. Even though I know he wanted a chance up front, it didn't work for him, and that's fair enough. And let's be honest, when you're playing second fiddle to Loch Ness Drogba, you're not going to look very good. It's impossible. So I've always got to get that plug in about
I was going to say, you haven't mentioned him for about 40 minutes, mate. Jeez.
Yeah, exactly, mate. It's just, we all know how much I love him. So yeah, hey, there's people above, way above our pay grade, considering Graham doesn't give us any money for this whatsoever. Definitely.
If I get 10 more subscribers, I'll start getting paid on YouTube, so you can have 10 pence each.
But they know what they're doing above, and I tell you, I'm going to put it out there. I think the managerial appointment will be quite exciting. I genuinely do. Even if it's only a short-term one, I think it's going to be quite exciting. So I think the lift that we're going to get from Defoe and a new manager, yeah, let's hope it's, you know, streaky Sunderland.
It really could galvanise, couldn't it? It's like I'm the most optimistic man in life. I'm the most pessimistic man when it comes to Sunderland Association Football Club. But I do feel like we didn't get beat 6-0 on Saturday, if that makes sense, because so much good stuff seems to be happening. We haven't got too long left, and obviously it's so hard to fit all of this stuff in. So I'm really sorry if you're listening and you think, oh, we should discuss that. And it's just hard, like, to fit everything in. So much has happened. You touched on before, Brad, about Congolo potentially off. There's also Jay Matete. There's rumours. I mean, by the time this goes out, we'll know who's coming, who's gone. But ultimately, it looks like an exciting end to the transfer window either way. It looks like potentially Congolo, although that might be off, potentially being for another centre-half if that's Jay Matete. I've heard we did want a centre-half and a centre midfielder, which would match up. Maybe it might just be the midfield if Congolo's off. And potentially Gooch, Flanagan, and obviously O'Brien's already left. I hate to be harsh on any players, like same O'Brien and Gooch and Flanagan, they've all tried really hard, but it feels like if you take out Defoe, bring in Defoe, and the other two, Congolo or Matete, even if it's just two of them and ship out the other three, it just feels like an upgrade, which again is, we've praised the recruitment team for a while. I think even if the only move that happens is Defoe in, O'Brien out, again, it's another upgrade, isn't it, Brad? They're doing well, the recruitment team.
Yeah, definitely, and it's refreshing from what we've been used to. In bloody hell, how many years are we going back now? I think the last time we had probably a successful window that I can remember was under Sam Allardyce. So I will give the recruitment team a lot of credit. I do echo what you have said. I wish O'Brien all the best. I haven't got a bad word to say about him. Good professional. Just didn't really work here. And I do think it is time for Gooch to part ways with the club.
Me too.
He comes under a lot of criticism. He's on his day, he's brilliant, but that day seems to be becoming more and more rare, in my opinion. I think he's just got to get that move to start his own career again, somewhere fresh. I mean, he's been here since he's 14, 15. I think it's the right time for him and the club to part ways. He'd go with my best wishes. And same with Flanagan. I know he's not everyone's cup of tea. This season, I think it's been his best season, apart from his little dip in form he's had recently. But yeah, I mean, if we can get two of the three incomings that you've mentioned there, coupled with the incomings that we've already brought in, you've got your Trey Hume, Roberts, Clark, Danny Bart. I think we would look at it and say we have come out of it stronger than we went into it, and that is without a manager as well still. And that's the purpose of a transfer window. If you can look at your squad and think we've came out of that better than we've went into it, it fills you full of confidence as a fan. So I'm guessing it would be the same as a player in that dressing room as well.
It's weird, Tom. I'll come to you with it. It's like I was half expecting to be recording this either Sunday night or Monday morning and discussing the match, and I was kind of like, oh bloody hell, I don't know how I'm going to dig through this. It's going to be like a therapy session, and it's weird because the question I've wrote down here to ask yourself and Dave before we leave is ultimately where we sit at the moment, which is 8:30 on Monday morning on transfer deadline day. It looks like if Jermain Defoe is not coming, then I'll be very surprised at this point with the cryptic things he's posted. It looks like we're going to make some good signings potentially. If we don't, we've still had a very good window, and we've shipped some deadwood out. No offense, Aidan O'Brien, and no offense to any of the boys that go. It does look like the squad will be stronger, even if it is just Defoe that comes in, and even if it is just O'Brien that goes out. Ultimately, although we're not in pole position to go up, I feel quite positive about Sunderland. Based on everything that's happened over the weekend, how are you feeling about it at the moment, Tom?
Not mega positive, because I still don't think we'll break that top two. I think we could have an amazing run, and it still might not be good enough. And playoffs, I'm never confident about. But I mean, I would be delighted to see Defoe back. Obviously, it's always quite exciting when we need a new manager, which is quite. What's the word? It's like it's probably not a good thing to be excited about that actually. In terms of the transfer, we'll see what happens in the last few hours. I wouldn't be getting rid of Gooch though, definitely not. Especially even pure his versatility, purely that I wouldn't be getting rid of him. But yeah, I'm feeling excited because we need a new manager and because Defoe's on his way back. I'm excited, but at the same time, I don't think it means we're suddenly favourites to get automatic promotion.
We can but hope. Dave, same sort of question to yourself. Obviously, I kind of agree with Tom, to be honest. I think we're going to have to go on an absolutely monumental run, a Roy Keane-esque run towards the end of that season when we went up, which is, of course, it's possible. And of course, with the squad we've got, it's 100% possible. But it's bloody hard, which ultimately means probably it is going to be the playoffs. See, if Speakman had listened to the podcast a couple of months ago, it wouldn't have been this issue. If you just listen to the podcast, Christian, it would be a different thing entirely. No, in all seriousness, I do feel positive because I'm kind of excited about Defoe getting announced. As we're currently speaking, we're waiting for this to happen in the scarf pick, and I'm excited about potentially Jay Matete coming in. I'm excited about the moves that are happening. I said the names are quite boring in terms of the manager, but I suppose there is a couple of names in there that would make me go, well, all right, fair enough. And ultimately, when a new manager comes in, it's always relatively exciting anyway, unless it's Howard Wilkinson and the Steve Cotterill dream team. And that's the one time I haven't really gone, oh, well, fair enough, I can get on board with that, I suppose. And maybe Parkinson, no offence, Phil. But to stop me from waffling, I'm sounding like Lee Johnson now. Ultimately, do you feel positive going into the last 6 months of the season? And on top of that, about Sunderland as a club, based on the sacking, the moves we're making and everything that's happened in the past few days?
I think that's probably the important part to differentiate. Am I excited about the rest of the season? I think you and Tom have basically put that to the sword. And yeah, it's going to take some monumental effort. And let's be honest, it's going to be a fun ride if it comes off. If it comes off and we do go on that run, we're all going to be sat here in 6 months' time thinking, yeah, okay, we didn't expect that. And it was absolutely brilliant. So, yeah, as we sit here now, without trying to sound too downbeat, playoffs, and we haven't got a great record in playoffs, unfortunately. So, fingers crossed that there is some kind of difference in history this time round. As for excited about the club, yeah, I finally feel as though in terms of recruitment, we're signing players who are of the right age, who have the chance to grow together, to actually invest in what we're about as a football club. They've all got points to prove as well. Some of them, you look at some of Patrick Roberts, he went for £11 million as a 17-year-old, if I'm not mistaken. Pritchard,
£14 million he went for.
14 million, sorry. They've got points to prove, or they should have points to prove. If they want to make it as a footballer, they should have points to prove. And to be signing players like that at the level that we're at, just as Brad sends a message saying that we're finishing second. Love that. Yeah, I'm really excited as a football club, especially if whether it's at the end of the season or whether it's in the next couple of weeks that we sign a long-term appointment as a head coach, manager, however you want to describe it. Yeah, I think I think I've said it before. There's one thing that I was going to say Mr. Boring, but we've had a few of them as managers. If there's one thing that Mr. Grayson said that I completely have in my mind completely all the time, and I totally agree with him, and there wasn't much that I agreed with Simon Grayson, by the way. He's probably up there with me hating him just as much as Phil Parkinson. As managers, not as people, by the way. Please don't take that out of context. You've got this huge juggernaut, and once it's turned around and once it's going in the right direction, it's going to take some stopping. It really will take some stopping. And I'm sure there is Sheffield United, Wolverhampton Wanderers, Leeds United. There's fans of all those clubs who will tell you that once it starts going in the right direction, it's quite an exciting ride. And I'm quite looking forward to that. I remember when we came down to League One, we were all buzzing to go to Kenilworth Road. We were looking forward to Adams Park. And yes, the novelties wore off, unfortunately, after 4 seasons of it. But it does also mean that you've got to start again, that you have to start fresh. You have to change your plans. And let's be honest, I'd rather be signing the players that we're signing now as opposed to Gilabodji and Dong, stuff like that. People we can see grow, people that we can see become part of the club. So, yeah, very long-winded answer. Totally not needed, not necessary whatsoever. But, yeah, excited for the long-term future.
So you're positive, yes? Just to confirm.
Yeah, I think that's what I was trying to say, yeah.
To everyone listening, thanks if obviously you've gone this far. There's so much that we wanted to cover and so much stuff that we could have gone further into. I hope we've covered enough to keep you sufficiently entertained. As I said before, please do subscribe, because I think I'm 10 subscribers away from being able to pay David and Brad. So I very much sound like Bono now. But please subscribe. Please call up, subscribe, whatever you have to do to subscribe. and I'd be able to pay them 10 pence a week. But I hope you've enjoyed it. Onwards and upwards. Hopefully, by the time this is out, we've made loads of quality signings. Jermain Defoe's parading around Jackie White's market with a scarf above his head. But thanks very much, Brad. Thanks, Dave. And thanks very much, Tom.
Jermain Defoe in the back. Jermain Defoe is in the back. Here he is. All right. We have a comment. Can we just... Jermain, you glad to be coming?
What do you think?